we're gonna get our presentation going. If we can figure it out, y'all. Y'all know the struggle. Y'all been there, I'm pretty sure. Oh, wow. Okay. I'm so sorry. We left Brenda out. Queen, can you introduce yourself, please?
Hello, my name is Brenda. I'm majoring in Industrial and Systems Engineering with a minor in business, and I am also a junior.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, so now we're going to get started with the presentation. So our first question is, what have you done differently to maintain your study schedule while taking online classes? So if y'all want to go in the same order, or y'all can just answer however you want.
Yeah, so for me, one thing I found that worked really well was actually making a schedule and writing things down, and having like your list of classes and saying like, okay, every day I'm gonna study for 1 hour for this class, 30 minutes for this class, and kind of like changing that every week depending on like when your tests are or if you have a quiz or something. But yeah, for me, I'm a very visual person, so kind of like writing it all down and like making that like schedule for myself really helped me.
Yeah, for sure. That's super important.
Yeah, for sure. I guess something I've been doing now, I've also set a more concrete schedule. Before, my days would be just more spontaneous and more like fluid depending on how my classes were going that particular day. But now, since a lot of my classes are asynchronous, I just set like, I still try to watch a lecture at the time that it's supposed to be. So that way it's just like concrete and it's like the same every time, and I commit a certain amount of time to study for my classes, so that routine really helps me going.
Yes, accountability. We love to see it.
Yeah, so I'll kind of bounce off of that. I do the same thing. So most of my classes are actually like I Zoom into them. And so a couple of my classes post videos and I'm accountable for watching the videos. So I try and watch them the day that they're posted, because in 1 to 2 days time, another one will be posted, and they add up really, really quickly. And then one thing that I've done differently is, instead of walking the normal time that I would be commuting to and from class, I've started reading my textbooks in between there. So it kind of breaks up my textbook readings. So I have 30 minutes of textbook readings in between my Zoom classes.
Yeah, those lectures definitely add up. I felt that.
Yeah, so for me, I still try to go to my classes that do have a time, and it basically keeps the schedule the same for me. But I also like every little thing that I have to go back to, instead of like completely writing it down and then forgetting about it, I like write it down on a sticky note and then put it on my computer. But also, if you have like an app for sticky notes or stuff like that, they're really helpful, and then you can always go back and like those, it's easier to refer back to than going on your notebook or your notes. So that's what I do.
Yes, literally I have so many sticky notes on my laptop. Definitely agree.
There are a lot of things that the other panelists have said that I kind of want to pull together. In terms of scheduling and in terms of making reminders for yourself and sticky notes and such, it is important, given the fact that we're doing online classes, and so each teacher is going to have their own website that they use, whether it's Cengage or Wiley, etc. And of course, now we have to deal with both eCampus and Canvas. So there are a lot of different sources of information that if you don't have some centralized way of organizing all of that information, you will lose track of something important and it will knock you off guard. So it is, I use a hard copy notebook because I respond better to hard copy things, and the notebooks are, I can show you, are this size, and so they're very easily portable. And then another thing is because my motivation has been sapped by the fact that I can stay in my room all day if I wanted to. I have been following a schedule which is more dictated by my tasks as opposed to any internal motivation. So it's okay to let deadlines and let tasks determine your schedule, which I know that probably sounds obvious to some of you, but that's been a major change for me this semester.
Absolutely. Don't we all love Canvas? Thank you so much for showing us. Now we're going to go to our next question. So the next question is, what new strategies have you used and what has worked best in your different types of classes? Just because we know that you don't necessarily apply the same study style for every class. So if you can just talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So one big thing that has helped me, since all of my classes this semester are online, or I'm choosing to take them online, is establishing just a workspace in my house where I know that when I come here, I have to work. And so that's helps me. That's not necessarily a strategy, but one thing that really is helped me to do better in my classes. And when it comes to different types of classes, so there's a difference between, there's huge difference between your major classes versus classes that you're not as interested in, but you need to graduate. For me, the classes I'm not as interested in, I just have to have that schedule for myself, even though it's not as fun as my education classes. I still make that a priority to, read the readings that are assigned to me every day, even if it's just for 30 minutes. I just make sure that I'm able to do it all, and I do it in my designated workspace.
I have made a huge, long to-do list, and I update it almost every single day as soon as I get a new task to do. And I review it every Sunday to review for the week. I didn't used to do that because my teachers would remind you, hey, you have a quiz coming up. Hey, you have an assignment due. Hey, make sure to read this before next class. But now that all my classes are videos, my professors don't really do that anymore. So I have a huge to-do list of everything that I possibly need to get done that week. And that kind of keeps me on track. And then I don't necessarily schedule when I do it. I have a certain day that I have to do it by. So I have to do this by Friday. If I do it by Monday or if I do it by Thursday, it doesn't matter as long as it gets done by Friday. So yeah.
Yes, checklists.
Yeah, I've totally also used that. Back in in-person classes, I just kind of rely on the professor to kind of remind us, oh, you have an exam in a week from now, But now since all my classes are online, I don't have that reminder. So it's just been really good to just go through all my syllabi and just make sure that I know when all my exams are so I can start preparing for them. And also something that I've totally used is that since my classes, like I said, are all online, all of them are also pre-recorded and stuff. So I've put a much bigger emphasis on lectures now. Back in-person classes, lectures were just kind of just an introduction, not super in depth into the certain subject we were going over. But now I get to go over the subject we're going over and first get introduced to it. And then once I review it, I can go back to the lecture and actually understand the totality of the lecture and the stuff we're covering.
Yes, I do the same thing. So you definitely want to take advantage of that.
Okay, so for me, I'm going to talk more about what has worked for me in different kinds of classes, because as a freshman I did struggle studying for calculus, STEM-based classes. And what I found really useful for those was taking because in those classes you'll get a lot of homework, and I would take my time with those and really understand what I was doing, and that helped me so much when I was reviewing for exams because I already knew and I had already practiced. Use your homework basically as practice for the exams. And then for if anyone ever needs to code as well, coding is just practice, practice, practice. So I got really good with like doing my homework and using it as practice, and then just doing extra practices as well for all of that.
Yeah, that's super important.
One of the benefits of in-person classes previously that I didn't realize, that I didn't appreciate beforehand, was when I was walking between locations, I would have basically a quiet time to myself, and especially whenever I learned the routes well enough that I could basically walk the routes without thinking where I was going, because I would just end up wherever I needed to be. And I could think about the material that was covered in the lecture that I had just come from, or I could think about the class I was walking to before it started. Once I lost that time, I realized how valuable it was. And so I'd encourage you to carve out time before and after every lecture to try and engage with the material, or think about what the professor said, or actively try and come up with a question that would be good to ask your professor in the office hours. And of course, utilizing office hours to ask valuable questions will have a myriad of other benefits.
That is great advice. Definitely the walks to Holdenfels hit differently. Okay, so now we're gonna go to our next question. So, what old study strategies have you continued to use that were beneficial when classes were in person?
Flashcards. I use flashcards for like everything, especially in my heavy science courses. Flashcards and any sort of review material that the professor posts is pretty much how I study. And I make the flashcards off of the lecture slides, so that way I'm not missing anything, and I correspond the lecture slides to what I wrote about it. So yeah.
I live by flashcards, so I felt that.
A really good study strategy that works for me, especially if I'm reading long text or like really dense reading material, is to actually, so like I use flashcards in a way of like, so everything I read like in a chapter, I'll try to summarize it on a note card, and then kind of like only list the main points. That way I'm not kind of remembering extra information, and I'm remembering like a lot of like the basis of like what each chapter is reading. So kind of like being able to summarize it in your own words is a really good strategy, especially with like longer texts.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I do the same, Audrey. Basically just summarize it, but I'm more of a sticky note person. I don't know why I pay attention to those more. But I just do them on a sticky note, and I would like basically put them on a wall or something I was looking at, something I'd look often so that I'd remember it. So that's what I do for memorization. But for like STEM stuff, and that involves formulas and stuff, I try to like not focus too much on like, I'd say, the exact problems, because sometimes you get like something you've never seen before. So I focus more on like the formula and what the formula means and like what it needs. So I just like basically memorize the formulas instead of like entire problem types as well.
Yeah, that can be super helpful.
I guess I'd say my studying hasn't changed too much. I still start reviewing my stuff like a week before my exams, and then I just go over all of my notes, go back and look at the PowerPoints. The cool thing now is, like I said, like I can go back and look at the lectures, and if I'm not understanding something from reading the PowerPoint or reading the book or whatever the case may be, I can go back and get it explained once again. But yeah, like I said, it hasn't changed too much. Still just looking back on my notes, just make sure I'm understanding like what was covered in lecture. And yeah.
Yeah, I found that even when we were in person, just recording the lectures myself really helped.
A study strategy which I would occasionally utilize on homework and even tests whenever I came across a problem I felt I couldn't deal with is I stopped trying to solve it however way I was previously trying to solve it, and I started writing in paragraph form the information the background information, whatever formulas I thought I would need, whatever statements I either knew or was taught or assumed to be true. And then writing out all that information allows you to catch simple mistakes if you misread a number. It allows you to question any assumptions that you brought into the problem incorrectly. And it allows you to see the step-by-step method that you should use to solve the problem. For example, sometimes I would even write out, I don't think I can solve this problem without knowing this piece of information. Because without this piece of information, I can't use this formula. Obviously, this is probably a bit more applicable in STEM concepts and STEM fields, but I think that the reason why all of us are here getting an education is because we want to be able to solve problems that either very few people know how to solve, and so we can make a lot of money by being one of those very few people, or we want to solve problems that nobody has ever thought of or ever successfully solved before. And so whether it's a homework problem, a problem from a previous exam, those are especially useful if the homework is not reflective of what the exams actually look like, then you want to ask for previous exams, or questions that you yourself find yourself thinking about, you should write them out in paragraph form, detailing all the information you know and what you think you need to know to solve the problem, what assumptions you are making, what assumptions you can afford to make, et cetera, et cetera.
Straight facts, man. I totally agree with you. Okay, so now we're going to our next question. What resources, if any, have you used to make sure that you still maintain your grades and retain the knowledge learned in your classes?
So for me, one resource I actually use a lot is Quizlet, but I make my own Quizlets about like the information I'm learning, and I'll just quiz myself over and over again. It's really easy, and you can do like all these different kinds of tests. You can do like the flashcards, you can do multiple choice tests. So it's a good way to like make sure that you really understand like what you're doing, and by typing out the questions, you actually like kind of learn them also.
Yeah, a Quizlet saves lives.
So I go to a lot of review sessions, SIs. They're still happening. Okay, in my opinion, they were way better in person. But online, it still gets it out there. The way that I learn is explaining things to others. So I really annoy my roommates and like all my friends when I have a test coming up. Like I'm like, hey, will you quiz me? So that way I can explain the concepts to them, especially if it's not something that's necessarily concrete. Or sometimes I explain it to myself in the mirror. Like I'm learning all the bones in my body. I will look at myself in the mirror and like just point out all my bones and describe it to myself. And when I point to a part of my body and I don't know what it is, that's a knowledge gap that I need to focus on. And then office hours, emailing professors. I'm not afraid to tell them that I have no idea what's going on in class, because that's what they're there for. They're there to help you. And then GroupMe. I have reached out to my GroupMes. I'm like, hey, y'all, does anyone want to meet up through Zoom to go over the material again? Or does anyone want to, or if I just have a straight up question, I'll ask it in the GroupMe, see if anyone else can help me. Obviously not about actual homework, but about conceptual stuff. We all abide by the Ag Honor Code. So, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Those people really can be helpful.
Yeah, everybody unmuted themselves. Yeah, I guess I really don't have much to say for this one. I don't really use too much of like note cards or Quizlet, just my good old notes written in my notebook. Also, like we do have review sessions before the exam, so I've been just making sure that I like attend those and I'm there. And we do have like recitation for my classes, so that has been helpful. Like especially because it's recorded, I get to watch them on my own time, and like I do try to schedule it, like I said, but I get to like watch it and rewatch it. So it's been like so redundant, but I've just like abused that resource so much of just like rewatching stuff so many times because that helps me.
I am a huge advocate for watching videos over too, so I felt that, Bernie. Thank you.
I have, I guess, two things to say about this. When it comes to keeping track of your grades, I would always open up, so whenever you're starting up your browser, I would open up your email. I have a Slack that I need to check on a regular basis. I would open up eCampus and I would open up Canvas. I would open all four of those tabs whenever you open your browser, the first thing. And at the end of the day, you should close your browser so that whenever you wake up in the morning, you have the opportunity to open it again. That way, you check those things for your grades and for any assignments and for any announcements as kind of the first thing you do every morning or every time you sit down at your workstation. Someone earlier had mentioned about having a separate workstation. I think that's a great idea. So whenever you are first getting started, you should open those four tabs and use that to check yourself. I also think it's worth trying to export that information into like an Excel spreadsheet. Type it up yourself. That way you know what assignments are coming up, how much of your grade they'll be worth. And knowing that logistical information because you typed it into an Excel spreadsheet yourself will help you keep your head above water for the rest of the semester. Second piece of advice, keep an eye on the GroupMes for your various classes and sections. And if the questions sound like good questions and seem like really insightful things that people should definitely be asking about, then you're not paying enough attention. Because people in GroupMe only ever ask the stupidest questions imaginable. And so if you're like, that's a good question that somebody just asked in the GroupMe, you need to be paying more attention.
Yeah, no, definitely. So for the resources that I use, I try to go to office hours and talk to my professors, especially after like a homework that has been graded and I have any questions regarding some of the things that I got wrong. They're like, in my opinion, one of the best resources you can have. And also, when it comes to studying, I like to use my peers as resources as well. I like to study in groups, and it's been super helpful because sometimes I know a topic more than they do, and I can explain it to them, and then they know a topic better than I can, and they explain it to me. And that way, it's like equal as well. And also, the group me's, like you guys can message and be like, anybody wants to study before the exam as well. Those are really good. Or most times people already ask like, hey, does anyone want to study? So I would definitely take advantage of that. It's not scary, I promise you. Most of the people in the class just want to pass, just like you.
That's great advice, Brenda. Thank you. So now we're going to go to our fifth question. How do you maintain your focus and motivation in the setting offered in online classes? Just because most of us are really limited to our dorms or our apartment.
A big one for me is making sure that your phone is always put away in lectures. Yeah, because just having it next to you is just such a distraction. Like, it's so easy to zone out for a second and when you're on your phone and you miss really important stuff. So yeah, sometimes I'll like charge it, but I'll put it on the other side of the room so that way like I can't even touch it. So yeah, that is a really big thing. And also what I said earlier about like having a designated spot to work in. Just that, yes, Samuel, do not disturb mode is a really great thing to use. But yeah, and also just having that designated workspace. That way, yeah, you're like, you know that when you're in this space, like you need to get your work done and you're not like laying in your bed listening to a Zoom lecture, which I used to do. And then I would like fall asleep in a lecture and like miss everything. So yeah.
Definitely guilty for that too.
I would like to second both of the bed thing and the phone thing. Those are absolute. Avoid those at all costs. I think increasing your level of physicality, and so doing exercise in between Zoom lectures, or I have like one of these that I can squeeze just to keep myself physically engaged in task while I'm also mentally engaged in the lecture. I find having those two things running at once, those two systems running at once, even if they're not focused on the same thing, is surprisingly helpful. Like they don't take away from each other. And making sure that you are engaged with other people throughout the course of the week. Don't leave it for the weekend. Engage with your roommates, your suite mates, your classmates if you can. I know that has become a problem in with Zoom classes, but even typing in the chat in answer to other people's questions, even though it's not strictly paying attention to the lecture, it is still surprisingly helpful to engage in the chat with the Zoom, and then that keeps you on Zoom, if nothing else. You're not browsing YouTube or Instagram.
Absolutely.
For my motivation, so it's really hard for me to get motivated, especially when I have like homeworks and labs that take hours. I usually like give myself a little reward after, like to look forward to. So most of the times it's food. Sometimes it's like, yeah, I'll go get my nails done after an exam or something like that. But that would set my motivation on a regular semester. But now it's more like I'll eat a snack after, or I'll like go for a walk or something like that. Those little things like keep me going.
I'm definitely going to second that one because I do not like to study conventionally. I don't have a desk in my apartment. That is not how I sit. If I start falling asleep in bed, I move to the floor so I don't fall asleep on the floor. I have multiple spots in my room that I sit, so like I'll move from one position in my room to the next, or I'll go downstairs and sit on my couch. But the whole desk and chair thing ain't really it for me. I go to campus. Even if I'm Zooming into classes, because that keeps me engaged. And yes, I sit on the floor in campus, like on campus. Or the other thing with the food, I do that as well. I've caught myself being like, man, I really want some dinner, but you got to finish watching this lecture first, because after dinner, you're not going to come back in and watch that lecture. So I forced myself to do it beforehand. But yeah, I've never really been a desk person, which a lot of people find weird, but there's other ways around that. Like I drink lots of water, stay hydrated, I shower. Like I don't wake up and just Zoom into class. I make myself get up, get ready as if I was going somewhere. And then normally I pop a squat on my floor and I Zoom into classes. So yeah. There are standing desks, but they're expensive. And so I just, ergonomics. So yeah.
Yeah, I guess I can relate to that a little bit. I don't sit on the floor, but I'm not a really big fan of sitting on my desk. I'd prefer to go to like the kitchen or just like sit outside on a bench or something. But yeah, also something that's been helping me a lot is So like, for example, today I was watching my biochem lecture. So I had a couple because I had a recitation and lecture to watch. So I'd watch my lecture, and then I'd watch my lecture for my psychology class, and then I watch my other biochemistry class. So instead of just watching like 3 lectures for the same class like in a row, I just kind of give myself breaks with like other classes or like homework in between them or something like that.
I want to say another thing. I think that the most dangerous situation to find yourself in terms of motivation, especially combined with Zoom, is feeling overwhelmed. If you are feeling overwhelmed, you need to identify the fact that you're feeling overwhelmed. You need to make a list of the things that are most abundantly clear as sources of stress. And you need to, number one, discuss those things with somebody you consider, I suppose, an accountability partner or a friend. And then you need to take those things, break them down by classes, and then take them to your various professors. So whenever I said that you should try and think up good questions to ask your professors during their office hours, part of the reason for that is so that they know your face and they can they know who you are. And then if you're feeling overwhelmed, you go to your professor and say, I'm feeling overwhelmed in this class for these reasons, and they will take an effort to try and help you with that and clear the most important things first.
Yeah, for sure. And like whenever you mentioned having an accountability person or a friend, we can definitely be that person for you. So you should definitely sign up for an ACU.
I have something else to say on this too. Your classes, like you should be interested in your classes. I'm assuming everyone here are freshmen. If you are not interested in your classes and you are doing poorly, you may or may not be in the right major. I know a lot of people, my friend, he was doing very poorly in his classes. He never wanted to go. He went and talked to his advisor, and it turns out that he was in the wrong major. He switched his major, and now he's doing amazing in his classes. He loves studying it. So if you are finding a consistent lack of motivation, as in none of your classes interest you, you should reevaluate what you're studying.
I don't agree with that piece of advice fully. As an engineering major, there are going to be a lot of different pieces to the whole puzzle. There's dealing with people, there's dealing with math, and there's dealing with science. I'd say those are kind of the 3 big parts of engineering. And there might be one of those 3 that you aren't as good at or you just don't find as interesting. And so try and break the problem down before you abandon ship. I think that might be good advice in other majors, but there's one caveat for engineers.
Yeah, I do kind of agree with Samuel there. For example, me, I am on the pre-med track, and as part of my major, I do have to take a lot of chemistry courses, which I really, really don't like. But in the end game, like it is like I want to be a doctor more than I don't want to take chemistry. So yeah, if you're unsure of what you want to do, I totally agree with Sarah, where like you need to like rethink about it and all that. But if you're like sure what track you want to take, like just a couple classes that are annoying that you have to do, that you have to like get over with, like it's fine. If in the end like you're really like determined about it, then it'll be good.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. I think it can be a little bit of both. You definitely want to see if it's worth it. Or if not, then yeah, you can just be in the wrong major. And a thing that I've begun to think about is consider your classes like something that is helping you grow, that rather than things that are in your way. So thank you all for that. Now we're going to go to our next question. So how do you maintain alternative study methods that might be less attainable due to social distancing. So for example, group studying, office hours, or on-campus tutoring. And I know that one of you mentioned like SI being better in person, so things like that.
Yeah, so for me, office hours, all of my professors offer their office hours on Zoom, which is like super helpful. And a lot of them, like almost every single professor will meet with you at any time as long as like they don't have a class during that time. So it's like really helpful, like if you need help at like 10 a.m. on a Thursday, but that's not when their Zoom or when their office hours are, you can always just email them like, are you free to Zoom call really quickly? I have a question. And most of the time, like they're very willing to Zoom with you at any time, which is super convenient because you don't have to like go anywhere. You can just do it right from your computer. And when it comes to group studying, I did have a few study groups that I was in earlier this semester specifically. I like don't have any study groups with my classes, but if I do have any like group projects, anything like that, we do also always meet on Zoom. So yeah, Zoom is a big thing for me. I love that you can just kind of like Zoom from your own house. You can Zoom your professor, your study groups, and things like that. So
I Zoom everything. I mean, yeah, for the most part I do. I've met up one time with people from my anatomy and physiology class. We social distanced in a park, and we studied there. But for the most part, everything that I attend is through Zoom.
Yeah, I do Zoom as well. But also I've like participated in like Discord, if anyone's familiar with that. You can also video chat through there, and a lot of people who are like gamers use it as well, so they're pretty familiar with it. So if that's something that you are interested in, and rather than Zoom, you can definitely do that as well, because I know Zoom may crash at some point as well. You can use that too, and it works just fine.
So I am somewhat of an extrovert, and so group studying methods were always counterproductive for me, because whenever I was with a group of people, pretty much any group of people, I would always find myself able to discuss or talk about something that was more immediately interesting than the material. And so it was so easy to get completely sidetracked for hours and accomplish like not even one problem on a practice exam, which is not a good situation. So I found that it is more productive for me to meet with people only if I feel like I have a good enough grasp on the concepts to be able to explain them so that I can kind of be a resource for other people. And number two, I try to do most of the studying by myself. And I think it's good for people to spend that time alone trying as hard as you can to intentionally hit a wall in your understanding and hit a wall with a given problem. Go until you can't go anymore, because that's where you'll find the actual problem that you're having. Your problem is probably more specific than you realize, and you won't figure out how specific it is until you've tried to solve it for 15, 30 minutes.
Yeah, something I totally missed about in-person classes was being able to like study with your friends and like like see them in lecture and all that and talk about stuff like right after lecture. That was really good. And I have tried to kind of still meet over Zoom with my friends, and it is hard, but it's definitely been effective to totally like review stuff. It's not because before we kind of like teach each other, but now it's more just kind of like a review, like, oh, I'm not like we're about to take the quiz in a couple hours. I don't get this. How do you do it? Oh, okay. All right, cool. Thanks. All right. But yeah, Zoom is definitely like pretty useful resource. It's very redundant to say Zoom again, but just make sure you're using that resource for sure.
Thank you, Bernie. So now we're going to go to our next question. What do you enjoy the most about online learning? Yay!
So for me, I think the reason I like online learning is because I'm able to pace myself better. I know everyone says that, but it's actually so true. Especially in my classes that are asynchronous. I have a few that don't have like a specific time. They're just online classes. So it's really nice to be able to like do it on my own time and kind of like fit it in wherever I can. So yeah, I think this year has definitely been, or this semester especially, and last semester, they've been really big changes, really big shocks, but it's always good to look at the bright side of things and think of all the awesome new things you can do with online learning.
We love that.
Something I've really liked about my classes online is, since like most of them are asynchronous, I can just like push them a little bit further than they would normally be. So like instead of having them at like 10, I have them at like noon, and that allows me to go to like the rec at like 9 and 10, which is like prime time to go during the week because everybody's like in class, so it's pretty empty. That's really nice, and it's also like, it's kind of sad. I do miss walking around campus, but it is really convenient because campus is so big. So like you'd have to get from point A to point B, and it takes a while. So it is really good to save that time and use it in more important stuff. Like I think Samuel was saying, or no, I think it was Sarah that was saying that she kind of like read the book in those times that she has to transition. I'm sorry, I don't know who said that, but somebody was saying that. So yeah, it's good to just be able to use that time more productively rather than just walking through campus.
Yes, get your gains up and your grades up.
Yeah, definitely. I love that I have more time. Before I would go in the morning and leave my apartment in the morning and then just won't come back till like 7 and at night. And it was just very time consuming, and I wouldn't eat as well because I'd have to microwave my food on campus, and it wasn't the best taste, I'd say. But now I get to like, cook my own food in between classes, and it's pretty nice to have that time and to eat better.
One of the I'm sorry, Sarah. Well, one of the things that was nearly fatal to me my freshman year was the fact that I would wake up 10 minutes before lecture. And obviously, in an in-person class, that is nearly impossible to get to. Fortunately, that only happened to me mainly with my Pols class, which, I mean, no, I'm kidding. Do not tell your Pols professors I said that. But now, if you wake up 5 minutes or 3 minutes before your lecture, you can still get to them on time. I think it's valuable to have a set wake-up time, and regardless of when your classes are. But the fact that it is so much easier not to miss lectures if you sleep in is an incredible benefit.
Yes, beat the hell out of Pols.
I would say I really like that I can do my classwork outside. As much as possible, I try and go outside. I have a little patio in my apartment, and we have a hammock there. I like to go to the park, read my textbooks. They're all downloaded onto my iPad. I bring my iPad. Last week I sat at the park for 3 hours, walked around in between breaking up reading for my textbook classes. But that was really nice. And one thing that this might not be the best advice, but I really enjoy it about online learning. I turn the transcript on and I watch lectures on 2-speed. Because my professors talk really slow and they're very monotoned. Don't do that if it is hard to understand the concept, obviously, but some of my classes currently are pretty self-explanatory. And so I watch the lectures on 2-speed, make sure I'm not missing anything, but I thoroughly enjoy that. And it bothers me when they have it in the format to where I can't speed it up. And transcripts, for sure. So, yes.
Y'all are going off in the chat. Thank you for that. So this is our last question. What is one piece of advice you would give to freshmen who are starting their first semester during this pandemic on Zoom? Or just period?
Okay, so my advice for freshmen is to, I know this sounds very cliche, but it's very true, to not give up, even if your classes are super hard. I know for me, I struggled a lot, especially because everyone's freshman year, you take kind of like more general classes, so they're not necessarily like your major specific yet. And they do get really difficult at times. But yeah, just to like keep going, and you guys are gonna get through it and it'll be good. Yeah, that's my advice.
That is great advice, man. Everybody needs to hear that.
My advice would be that you are not alone. You may be alone right now in your bedroom when you're doing your studying. You may look around the room and be the only one in the room, but you are not alone. There are so many resources out there. There are so many different organizations like this one that are specifically designed for freshmen and for those that are struggling. So if you are struggling, you don't have to ride the struggle bus by yourself, is what I'm saying. Don't get discouraged, reach out, pick yourself back up if you have a bad test grade. It is going to be okay. It is not the end of the world, and there are resources out there for you.
Exactly, 100% agree, and we are one of those resources, so definitely sign up for an academic checkup.
I'll agree with the grades. Don't be scared. It happens. And trust me, that's not gonna, like, one bad grade is not gonna stop you from finishing college, I promise you, or even for engineering and getting into your specific major. It happens to everyone, and then just during this pandemic, we're all learning essentially. Like, we weren't used to Zoom either, and this is all new virtual learning. So you're definitely not alone because every upperclassman is struggling as well. And if you want to reach out, feel free to. Everyone's super nice, I promise you. Whoever you're thinking of, oh, they seem nice, I have a question for them, definitely reach out. It's super helpful. And also find your organization, reach out to organizations. They are what will keep you going. They will help you keep going, basically.
I can confirm we are really nice, so definitely reach out.
Yeah, something I like to say. Yeah, like, don't be scared to reach out to people. Like, now it is a little bit harder since you don't really see people in person, but yeah, I really do encourage, especially freshmen, to just like interact with people in their classes or their lab, especially their labs, because at least my biology labs and my chemistry labs, there's only 30 people. So since it's not that many people, like, it's less intimidating to like approach somebody and be like, oh, hey, this is my name, I'm in your class, let's study together, let's work together, let's beat the hell out of this class, you know? So yeah, totally use that resource, because it's really cool to like have friends in your major. You just help each other out, go on Suzuki breaks whenever you should be studying, but it's just like really helpful, you know? And also a resource that totally helped me my freshman year was, shameless plug, was a peer mentor. I'm also a peer mentor, not part of this group, but yeah, still. Totally use that resource. If we're the same major as you are, like, we've probably taken the classes that you're taking. We probably like know which professors are better, which ones are worse. Like, we know how to study for their exams. So yeah, just totally use that resource. And I think it's really helpful in my opinion.
I'd say three things are three of your most valuable tools as a freshman. One is diversification. You are not just a student. You are a person with a vast set of interests, I would hope. And so don't constrain yourself to being, I guess, a robot who takes in assignments and spits out grades. Consider that you have more diverse priorities, figure out what those are, and figure out how to use those priorities and those ambitions to your advantage. Joining an organization, I've really only been a part of one for the past 3 years, but even just being a part of that one organization has been very helpful to me. Number two, introspection. If you fail to spend time with yourself thinking about what exactly your problems are, and where exactly your strengths and your weaknesses lie, I will always be a proponent of journaling, but that might not be the effective route to do introspection for everybody. Then you won't be able to solve your problems. You won't be able to solve any specific problems that are actually worth solving. You'll probably just end up complaining about general problems that can't be solved. So introspection is valuable. And then once you've done that introspection, and as a result of diversification, because you have many contacts in many different areas, communication. You have to communicate your struggles, your questions, to specific people, especially the same problem to multiple different people, and more likely than not, you'll get the problem solved. And if you don't, well then hopefully you've stumbled across a problem that nobody has solved, and now you have an opportunity on your hands.
Absolutely. Every time I need a journal, I guess, I open the notes app on my iPhone and I just go off in that section. So 10 out of 10 recommend. Awesome. Well, that was the end of our presentation. I hope that everybody got to learn something and just take a little study break and listen to other people's voices other than your own. So this is just a little recap of the services and programs that we have. Don't forget that on campus you have the community learning centers, and while you may not have class on campus, those are still accessible to you. So definitely take advantage just to get out of your dorm, get out of your apartment. There's still residential tutoring, and the only difference is that now it's obviously online, but it's super easy to access through the Academic Success Center. You could just go ahead and go on there. But yeah, and so you should definitely just keep using your resources. They're still accessible to you. So yes, that's all. Thank you all so much for coming. And I hope that everyone gets the opportunity to sign up for an ACU. So here you go. That's your, that's your, what's it called? Oh, somebody's whispering to me that I have to give y'all the password. So y'all already know, to get your boba tea. So yes, we're going to stop you at the door and ask you for the password. And the password is, are y'all ready? Y'all listening? Okay. The password is Zoom We Mama. So for the cultured people that have watched Diary of the Wimpy Kid, you know where this is from. And the password is also in the chat. So if y'all can, yes. Watched and read, yes, sir. Yes. So there you go. That's y'all's password. And I hope y'all can come and get your tea. So if anybody has any questions, yeah, absolutely.
I'm not sure how many people are still here. Feel free to, if you have any specific questions, for me in particular, I'm not sure about the rest of the panelists, I'll let you guys speak for yourselves. Feel free to reach out through the Aggie Peer office, and they can reach out to us as well.
Absolutely.
because I think a lot of studying is personalized. You find your own personal methods. And so if one of the panelists or another resonated with you, hopefully you'll have the chance to speak with me if anything I said sounded like it'd be particularly helpful to you.
Thank you so much for that. Okay, well, I have to get going, y'all. But again, thank you so much for joining us.